Now you want to see, okay, is this going to fit into the workflow? Or is this something that feels usable to my audience? And then when you're going to get ready to go to market, you have to test an entirely different audience, because a lot of times the users are not the purchasers. And so determining, how these decisions are made to bring your technology into a care setting, or, who is ultimately responsible for budgetary approval? Are there any other channels it has to go through?
Welcome to Startup Physicians. Please like and follow our show to join our community of physicians who are reimagining healthcare delivery. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Startup Physicians podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Allison Kerfman, and I'm excited to be joined today by Shelli Pavone. She is a co-founder of a company that I got to know recently called Inlightened. And the more I got to know the co-founders of this company, the more I realized that this was something that I feel like a lot of doctors should know about. And she has a pretty interesting story about why they started this company and why she sees such a need for doctors to get involved in healthcare startups. So thank you, Shelli. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. Well, maybe as we get started, you can just tell us a little bit about your background and how you got involved in this work.
Absolutely. So my background is in healthcare. I worked in healthcare since I got out of college. I started my career working for large pharmaceutical and device companies, and then I transitioned into working for startups about 10 years ago. And in my journey, I saw some similar things along the way that led me to founding Enlightened. And really, that was the main disconnect between these healthcare companies, whether large or small, innovators, and the healthcare professionals, those on the front lines of delivering care. When I worked for really large pharma and device companies, they would put tons of money and effort behind developing a new therapy or device. And being a part of the commercial team, we were tasked with going out and really talking to the healthcare professionals and, ultimately asking them to purchase or utilize these tools. And the reaction that I received a lot of times was really just incredulous looks, like, this is not what we need, or this is not what we asked for, or this doesn't fit into my workflow, or the patients aren't going to benefit from this because of X. And it was really a bewildering situation for me because, I'm young in this industry, assuming that they're going to spend this much money developing something. Surely they've done enough research to make sure that they're
solving the right problem.
What's needed.
Yeah.
And, unfortunately, that just wasn't the case. And when I went into a startup for the first time, I found a similar issue. It was just derived from the root of a different problem, because a lot of the startups didn't really have the access to the healthcare professionals, or if they did, I think oftentimes they felt like, okay, well, if we talk to one person, then we know everything we need to know to like forge ahead and innovate. And, that's just not the case. I worked for a company that developed a module in spine, and they had spoken to one spine surgeon, and this spine surgeon is an incredible spine surgeon, but he can't speak for all spine surgeons in a very variable category. And so they developed something a little bit in a vacuum, and it was somewhat obsolete for a large number of the population. And I think that when we see innovations develop without the input of healthcare providers and professionals, we end up getting things that don't solve problems for patients or providers. And so it's kind of all for nothing.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to start Enlightened because I thought there was a better way to connect these two sides of the equation.
Yeah. And when I first met with your co-founder, I feel like we had a lot of, kindred spirits about this idea that, industry needs the voices of clinicians. And I'm focused specifically on the physician population, But there are other clinicians too that I know you guys serve, but we're kind of in these like parallel tracks, and there's not a lot of opportunity to kind of take a pathway to cross over. Or there's not a lot of tools that are available that help, doctors who are really focused on day-to-day practice of the frontline work of seeing patients who actually have the best perspective of what their patients may need. But there's no really good conduit to industry and to these sorts of companies that are really, really looking for that sort of valuable input.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I meet a lot of physicians through my work with Enlightened. And a lot of times when we're familiarizing the idea of what we do to them, they're really unsure about, how to get in contact with these startups or how to start to work in innovation, have an impact innovation. And sometimes it's because they're unaware of the way that they can contribute their ideas, but other times it's just they don't know how to get in contact with these people. And then of course there's the other side of the equation where sometimes you'll have startups going to speak to clinicians and healthcare professionals, and they're asking them to give their time and input for free. And, at the end of the day, I think that everyone's aware of how much work and time it takes to become a physician. And it's a very time consuming, arduous job. And so I believe that they should be compensated for their role in the innovation process as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to get into kind of the solution that you built. I know that my approach has really been, this podcast, really trying to help physicians at least see that there are other people doing things that they could do also. I train physicians also, and I know you say sometimes they don't know how to find the opportunities or even get connected in the industry, and so that's one of the things that I do in a more intensive way of like really training physicians to understand like what is your story, what are your transferable skills, what are the things that get you excited that you feel like are real problems that you could help contribute to find the solutions. But there's a lot of companies out there and there's a lot of physicians out there, and so I'd love for you to describe a little bit about the approach that you took to try and find a way to solve this problem.
Absolutely. So we started building, we have a little bit of like a chicken or the egg situation with Enlightened, right? Because there's two sides of what we're trying to do. There's the innovators, the industry, and then there are the healthcare professionals. And so we started out by talking to industry, determining, what they're doing, how are they finding healthcare professionals to connect with, trying to understand if they really understood how critical it is to have those voices within their process. And what we found through that process was that they understand it's important, but they struggle finding those people. If they do find them, they're usually going through like their networks. And we saw a lot of echo chambers happening, right, where they weren't getting out and reaching out to a large enough volume of individuals or people with like diversity of thought. And so there was that. And then once we knew that the problem was recognized and persistent in the industry community beyond my personal experience with it, we started talking to the healthcare professionals, and we started building a network of individuals that were interested in kind of dipping their toe, sharing their thoughts, and being a part of the innovation process. And so over the last 5, almost 6 years that Enlightened has been alive, we have brought on thousands of healthcare professionals into our network. And we really take the time during our onboarding process to get to know them, get to know their background, their areas of expertise, what they're passionate about, so that we can match them with the right opportunities to engage with industry. And, one of the things that we hear most from the individuals that participate in research through Enlightened was that was so much fun. I really enjoyed that because unfortunately, I think that the delivery of care has become inundated with a lot of process and technology, and it's taken a little bit away from the passionate reasons a lot of these individuals went into this field in the first place. And when they get to spend time dealing with innovation, it's like it sparks a piece of their brain that remembers why they are doing this in the first place. And they get
Mm-hmm.
really excited to continue doing it.
Yeah, I totally understand that. And I feel like just that energy that you experience when you're around co-founders that are, I mean, there's just no level of startups that is like just going to work today, like it just doesn't exist in that field, because it's like you gotta run fast, you gotta be excited about what you're building, otherwise why would you be building it, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so I think that when physicians get to experience that sort of energy of looking at a problem in a new way, and really truly feeling how good it feels to be able to contribute knowledge that they didn't have before,
Mm-hmm.
it's really rewarding. And so I'm not surprised at all that that's the feedback that you've gotten from your clinicians.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's incredibly rewarding for them. And then, we get the feedback from industry as well that they felt like they were able to change course because of the information that they found out, or they were able to validate a course of action or an idea that they had, and I mean, I, as a startup founder myself, I never want to see somebody get information that invalidates what they thought. But sometimes to me, that's some of the most rewarding pieces because I know that I've helped them avoid a potential setback in the future, right? You don't want to find out that your idea is not good when you're ready to go to market. You want to find
Exactly.
out in the very
When you're
early
still building it
stages.
on paper. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the move fast and break things ethos, right? But in healthcare, you have to be responsible. And responsible disruption, I think, is heavily aided by making sure that you're consulting with the experts very early on in these stages. And we've had companies that have worked with us that are still in like stealth mode, right? They don't have like a presence, they don't have even a name sometimes. They're just trying to figure out if their assumptions are correct. And when we've engaged professionals on their behalf, we've found that, they have changed course or they have molded their idea into something much more realistic and effective because of those voices, which is really gratifying to me because that's the whole point of us doing this.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think you and I have both seen examples of innovation that maybe didn't get the right input at the right time and ended up with a product that didn't ever go to market. And I think that's kind of what you described earlier. And I think for companies, it's amazing to think that they could use your platform to actually consult with multiple experts of the same specialty to run it by a lot of people. I know that the core principle of what I have learned when building a company from scratch is the process of really de-risking that idea by
Mm-hmm.
trying to identify every single variable that will lead to, changes in your business case or your clinical model. Try and identify all the core variables that are assumptions that you're making, and then go try and find the answers
Mm-hmm.
to whether your assumptions are correct. Because sometimes when you are making a spreadsheet and you are assuming 70% is the number, but the
Mm-hmm.
real number is really 30%. You can't know that. You're making an assumption, and you can't even get the exact perfect right number because unlike healthcare or unlike medicine, where we are using an evidence base and we have done all these research studies, and this is this is the guideline for this.
Mm-hmm.
When you're building a company, a lot of these variables, you're just making your very best guess. And you're
Yeah.
doing everything you can to de-risk the idea by getting as much input on these different variables as you can. And so I think that this platform to be able to connect with a multitude of experts in the same specialty and maybe even ask them all the same question, but get different reactions. If you get 10 endocrinologists that all say, like, this is a slam dunk idea and you are completely spot on, and this is how it's going to help patients,
Mm-hmm.
not only are they going to get new ideas for new revenue streams and different, aspects of their model that they might need to tweak, but they have really good validation that, yeah, go ahead and put some capital into this because
Mm-hmm.
it's probably going to be good. But if you
Yeah.
get, 8 people say, this is not what my patients need, and only 2 that say it would be worthwhile, then you have some more research to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I find that really at every stage of the innovation life cycle, it's important to kind of go back to an audience to figure out where you are, right? Because you might have de-risked your idea and determined ultimately the idea that you're moving forward with. But once you've got, if you're innovating in technology, like your MVP, right? Now you want to see, okay, is this going to fit into the workflow? Or is this something that feels usable to my audience? And then when you're going to get ready to go to market, you have to test an entirely different audience because a lot of times the users are not the purchasers. And so determining, how these decisions are made to bring your technology into a care setting or, who is ultimately responsible for budgetary approval? Are there any other channels it has to go through? I mean, we work with a lot of payers too in the Enlightened network. And so a lot of times it's determining like reimbursement, formulary situations, and then, ultimately even messaging that might resonate with your audience. And so I think there are multiple touch points during the innovation life cycle where you should be getting out and talking to different audiences within the healthcare industry to determine if you're on the right track. Because, just like when you're de-risking your initial idea or clinically validating something, you need to do that with kind of every step because you have different stakeholders involved as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So now I'd like to ask you a little bit about what I know this audience is probably curious about, which is from the doctor's perspective to
Mhm.
use a platform like yours. Is there like criteria that you have to have like consulted before, or is there a requirement to be part of your platform to have met a certain number of background requirements?
So we don't have a requirement that they've had to consult before. We really like the people that are new to this because I think they tend to have really novel approaches. And, if you look into the industry, right, if they've been sampling the same individuals over time, right, we're not getting anything new. So we love people that don't have experience in this. I mean, those that have experience are great too. And then from a qualification perspectives, you know, we have a process of onboarding that we ask that the individuals that are in our network complete because we want to verify that number one, of course, that they are who they say they are. We want to make sure that they don't have, any penalties or anything on their record. And then the rest of the onboarding process is really just about digging in and understanding who they are as a person and a professional. Again, we're interested in knowing what is their area of expertise, and that's specialty and subspecialty, of course, but drilling down even further, right? What type of patients do they treat? Is there anything that they are specifically known for or focused on? And then also, what are they passionate about, right? Because we can have, somebody that has and, focus on internal medicine, but they're really focused on like value-based care or something like that, right? Or they're passionate about that. And so that helps us determine where they might be a good fit. And so, that's really the focus of our onboarding process. It's the verification of their background and then just diving into their area of expertise. And then once we get through that onboarding process, we do host them on our platform. We have a proprietary bio, and then that's how companies that work with Enlighten can find them. And that's how the people who work internally for Enlightened for our concierge clients can connect with them and put them on projects as well. So it's really, it's the process is simple, but we do try to get as in depth as possible because it benefits both sides when we have the best information on these individuals.
And do the physicians have to pay anything to be part of your platform?
They do not. So the physicians and we work with physicians, clinicians, nurses, any healthcare background, but we used to take a percentage of what they were paid for each engagement. We don't anymore. So it's free to be on the platform, and then we have a secure Stripe integration. So once they complete an engagement, if they've connected their bank account through Stripe, they will get paid in full in a matter of days usually.
So it makes it a lot easier than, someone who maybe sets up their own whole back office for their own consulting. You kind of take all that administrative side of things off.
Exactly. And I one of the things that we discovered in our early days of research and talking to clinicians who had done this type of engagement before was they were like, well, I don't even know if I got paid because they were sending me a check and I don't know if I got it, or, and then when it came like tax time, there's a lot of like confusion, in our platform. They can log in, they can refer their, colleagues and friends to our platform, and they can also see all of the engagements they participated in, what they were paid. And it's a really like smooth transition. And so there's a lot of like the guesswork and the admin taken out of it. And then also, come tax time, right? If you've earned the over the like $600 it is, we send you the 1099. So there's really no guesswork involved. You just, you're paid through Enlightened. You can track it all. And it makes it really easy for our clients as well because they know they can easily connect with the same individual if they want to follow up again, and payments are simple and secure and they're all tracked.
Yeah. Yeah. So that sounds great. And it seems like a very positive model for clinicians because they're the commodity, right? They're the experts, the ones with the knowledge that your clients, the industry and the companies are seeking. So I'm curious to know if there's specific like specialties or areas that you feel like you have a lot of demand for, or if there's thoughts on like kind of where you're seeing a lot of interest.
Yeah, I mean, I think healthcare is cyclical in certain ways, right? We have like it goes through its trends. Throughout the pandemic, it was a lot of like people that had experience with remote patient monitoring and telehealth. And, now I think that typically we see a lot of need for oncology, cardiology, uh, you know, urology is a big one. And again, it depends. And we have, if I were to look into our mix of projects right now, it's probably all over the board. um, you know, but I would say that those are the specialties that are most in demand in this moment, but it changes so frequently. And, we are open to all, individuals with healthcare backgrounds. We're very thoughtful about the healthcare professional experience with Enlightened because, as you said, they are the commodity, and we want to make sure that they feel respected, and that their time is respected, and that they are getting something out of the work that they do with us.
Yeah, it seems like a really low risk opportunity for physicians. Cause I will tell you that I did join your platform. I wanted to see what it was like. And, it wasn't a ton of work to like, I mean, you should know what your expertise is and you should be able to answer these questions.
Yeah.
But worst case scenario, if they join your platform and don't get, opportunities from it, then you made a bio somewhere. I mean, you didn't pay money to be on it.
Yeah.
But on the best case, you could be connected with opportunities that could be, an exciting and interesting way to get involved. And like you said, you don't have to learn all the administrative back end side of like,
Yeah.
all of the things that you have to do to run a consulting business.
Exactly. Yes.
Very cool. Well, I wanted to make it really clear to people that enlightened starts with an I,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And so for people who want to find you, what is the best way to connect with you?
Yes. So our website is Get Enlightened. And again, enlightened is an I. So if they go to Get Enlightened and they're interested in signing up, you can sign up there. All our socials are also Get Enlightened, but on the website there is a tab for healthcare professionals. They can sign up right through that. We have our support team that gets in contact with them. And, if during the sign up process, they don't want to fill out all the forms or they have questions, they can opt to have a phone call with one of the people at Enlightened and we'll walk them through getting their bio and everything set up. We try to make it as easy as possible, but, all of our socials are at Get Enlightened and the website is getenlightened.com. And I think that, that's the best way to connect and find us. And, on our website, we've got a lot of information about the types of projects that we've worked on. We have, in the news section, and then we also often do spotlights on some of our experts as well. And so, I think that's always really interesting for prospective experts to look and see some of the other individuals that we've worked with. And, we
Yeah.
spotlight kind of what they're doing, sometimes outside of their clinical work. So it's very
Yeah.
interesting. Mhm.
That's awesome. And we'll make sure to put those links in the show notes as well. I have really enjoyed this discussion. I think that you and I have different backgrounds, but have come to find the same problem. And I think that it's really validating to hear someone who has worked so much with industry to say there is such a need for clinician perspectives in these developing companies. I know I tell people that all the time, but it's always good to hear people from industry saying that too, and saying that they see a demand and see a need. Because my goal is to really inspire other physicians to get involved in this work, to realize that they have something to contribute. They have a lot to contribute. And I think that I was really excited to get to know more about your business and how that could be a really low barrier to entry way to get involved. So thank you so much for joining me today. I really, really appreciated all your perspective.
Thank you so much for having me. I completely agree. Their input is invaluable, and we need more to get involved in the innovation process. So thank you for all that you're doing to make that happen.
All right. All right. And thank you everyone for listening. Have a great day. Thank you for listening to Startup Physicians. Don't forget to like, follow, and share.